Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review more Tommy Oliver episodes, and so really I wanted to cover Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 2, the story arc dubbed The Green Ranger Returns, or Return of the Green Ranger. So, I really could, feel the reused footage in these episodes, and it was really painful. Why can't the Dragon Zord just fight the Thunder Megazord? Come on! Why can't we just have these two battle it out? Or even have the White Tiger Zord, or when it gets to the battle mode, which I couldn't recognize the real difference between everything until watching more of this show. But so we have the White Tiger Zord going into battle mode and fighting against the Dragon Zord, and I'm just like, man, we really have to have one person on one screen and one Zord on one screen and one Zord on another. And I was like, man, that is just so, ugh. Could you just imagine if they went on to further on in the Power Rangers season still tried to do that today? People would just be like, what? People were easily won over by it in the past. But also, I would just ask, how much footage had gone on and been heavily reused from X number of episodes for Power Rangers really just be like, oh yeah, that's reused footage. Oh yeah, we really have quite a bit of time where, especially in these episodes, we're starting to realize the real mistakes that happened through these three episodes. There's one time where the Green Ranger goes on and kicks this rat, and then you can obviously see him sliding, and there's obviously the reverse shots that where the Dragon Zord is down, and so it's oh, he has to get back up and go back in the water, and everything is just in reverse. And so it's all right, because they did that trick for Power Rangers for years. Reverse shots, and oh, they're flying into the Zord. Oh, they're flying out of the Zord. So it's just shot in reverse every single time. So those things I just found to be funny. But so anyways, let's go on and let's talk about this episode. So this is a Tommy-centered episode where, of course, since Tommy seems to be the new leader, and we have Rita going on and talking to the Ghost of Darkness and stating it's well, hey, the only way that you can go on and defeat these Power Rangers is by taking Tommy out. So you have to figure out a strategy to go on and take Tommy out, and what better way to take Tommy out by having Tommy himself take out Tommy. So that goes on and leads, of course, the Ghost of Darkness sending out the Wizard of Deception, and he goes on and not only clones Tommy, but then also is to send the rest of the Power Rangers besides Tommy packing into the 1700s, or the 18th century, where, of course, the Power Rangers are going to go on and give you a kind of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 kind of story, with some rats rolled in, some monster rats. Come to find out, we have some ancestors of both Bulk and Skull, a colonial soldier and a guy named Ben. Or Uncle Ben, bizarrely. So hopefully Bulk or Uncle Ben doesn't get killed, and Peter Parker takes up the mantle of Bulk. I don't know. It was a goofy thing. Because when Kimberly turns like, hey, like that looks like Uncle Bulk or Uncle Ben, and so yeah, so let's go on and let's just go in to some other parts of this episode. So we have Zed and we have Rita, who bizarrely have to dance in this episode, and or in within these episodes, and we have Zed and Rita, who it seems are to finally go on and possibly have this idea of birthing a child, which a lot of people know that somewhere down the road. I'm not quite sure where. It might be in either Overdrive or RPM, one of the seasons of which that I've never really legitimately seen that episode. There is to actually be a Zed and Rita's son that ends up coming up in one of the other episodes. So this is to kind of spark that seed that legitimately happens in another episode. So that I think is really quite cool. And so with that said, I would state that you can really tell some goofy things happened in this episode as far as editing goes and as far as like recycling shots. But other than that, I had fun with these episodes. I thought that they were, when putting all the episodes together, I think they were really fun to, again, have Tommy play the evil Tommy against the White Ranger, to really kind of end off in one of the episodes just having Tommy be like, I'm the Green Ranger. Like, I thought that was cool. So really, there was some stuff that just kind of won me over regardless of all the issues that happened in this story. Plus also the goofy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 storyline that we technically had for a portion of the Rangers here. And I think also, like, episodes before of the season, they played with some kind of past thing anyways. So, like, this story might have somehow gotten, like, recycled from some other story, but I'm not quite sure, because I don't remember. I haven't seen Mighty Morphin Season 2 in quite a while. It's been a number of years. But so, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers. The grading of these, I would state that, like, it's good to just see evil Green Tommy, regardless of how the story is not well put together. So, regardless, I actually thought these episodes were, like, they were a solid good, kind of 3 episodes together, but I think you would have to watch them together, and I wouldn't suggest watching them separately. If you watch them, like, individually, you would probably have a way different grading. You would probably just say, it's like, man, this episode sucked, man, this episode is stretching, man, this episode is just to be filler, because of course, like, it all, like, is to calculate together and be like an overall good story that is satisfying enough, except for the whole monster rat thing. That was really goofy. Here's one problem that I might have with this whole thing, though. So we had the Rangers who go on and deal with monster rats in the past, but then they don't actually do away with that problem. I would have naturally assumed that they would be going back into the present time to all of a sudden have, like, monster rats rule the world, and there would have never gone on and been Power Rangers, and, like, unfortunately, like, we would have had the Power Rangers all just be dead. So, shouldn't they have gone on and faced those rats and then gone into present day? But I get it. There's a whole rhyme and reason for what they were doing. But still, that was to be one kind of hole in my logic of like time travel, where like the Rangers would go back to some reality where rats ruled the world, and Rita or Zed or whoever would have been like king of the rats. But so instead, it seems that they just kept stating that it's like, oh yeah, we'll come back and we'll defeat these rats. And I was like, okay, like that's doesn't seem to me how like time travel works. But Bill and Ted would also do the whole thing where they would like want to go state that it's like, well, hey, uh like Ted, remember, like do this and go back in time and do this, and then all of a sudden they have this in their hands. So time travel is a crazy mother. So, anyways, let's just go into the double five time territory. If anything, there is probably a number of different kind of apps that you can dare in fact watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for absolutely free. I would recommend you going on to a number of different kind of new releases that I've gone on to do through a recent amount of time. I'm not quite sure if any of the apps of which that I've listed still exist on the Google Play Store, but I'm sure there might be a number of bootleg apps. If you can go in and search movies app through a Google Play Store, I'm sure something will pop up that at some point you'll be able to watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or any other season for absolutely free. But so, with that said, let's go on into the double five time territory, because it's about that time, yet again, to of course go into spoiler time. Spoiler time is about that time again to spoil these episodes. I went probably very vague about the whole kind of teeing up of this episode, or I kind of was all over the place, but really when looking at it, hopefully I can go on and get a better pattern of way of which that this is to go on to for this. So let's go into spoilers. So first off, we end up going into Angel Grove High School, and we of course have our Rangers being taught by Appleby, and she of course is assigning everybody like, well, hey, like what time period do you want to go back to, and write a report about it. So we have all the Rangers sitting down at this table, and so everybody's making a clear consensus of what time that they would actually want to go back to. So we have Rocky that states that he wants to go on to be in Viking times. Tommy wants to go on and be in like King Arthur times. We have Billy that wants to go back to the 30s to assist Einstein, which I'm like, well, of course he does. Heaven forbid, like we have the science guy that always has to play that science role. And plus also, like, David Yost had worked hard throughout all those years, having to remember all of those goofy lines that he would have to go on and memorize and state and whatever. And some of those lines he still remembers to this day. The goofiest, weirdest ones, he just like pops them out like that. And because he's like, yeah, I had to probably say that in my head like 30 times to get it right, because I knew that was the one line that I was going to butcher. And so we bizarrely had Kimberly that just wanted to go back like a very brief time to where there was some sale going on at this mall, and Aisha tells Kimberly, it's like, well, like, I don't think that's what the project means, Kimberly. Because all that matters between Kimberly and Aisha within these 3 episodes are either going to the mall or makeup. That seems to be the 2 things going on here. So we have everybody getting a clear consensus of where they want to go back to. And so we, of course, need Adam to go on like, hey, Adam, spill the beans. When do you want to go back? Where do you want to go back? Why do you want to go back? So come to find out, we have Adam that states that he wants to go to the Renaissance time, because that's the only thing that he can really think of. And supposedly Adam states that because he's thinking that there was to be a lot more romance during that time period. Okay, I don't understand the clear consensus of that decision, but either way, Adam is always to be the guy who is to be this romantic, as well as him eventually at some point turning into the frog Power Ranger because, of course, he wants women to kiss him all the time. I don't know what it is of why they have to goofily go on and make Adam seem that he's all he thinks about is just women all the time. What's going on with Adam? He's this shy guy that, like, all he wants to do is get women, and I'm so confused. Because, like, the two of those don't really work out. Being shy and then wanting women don't really work out. But anyways, so we then have Zed, who is going on and talking to Goldar, and we have Zed, who is just stating, like, well, I would love it if all the Power Rangers would all go back in time to where I would no longer deal with them. And that's what Goldar wants. And we, of course, have Goldar mentioned to Zed. It's like, oh, the, Lord Zed, Rita has concocted, the Ghosts of Darkness, and the Ghosts of Darkness was to have a wizard at some point, right? So, we weirdly, in this story, have the Wizard of Deception that had some past history with the Power Rangers, and I'm kind of curious what that past was. More than likely, from what I saw, like, there is a comic book version of the Wizard of Deception, and not quite sure where that fits into the comic books of things, but maybe they cover that somewhere. But so, we have Zed, who's like, well, okay then, like, I'll go on and I'll have Rita go and speak with the Ghost of Darkness, which is just this skull with all these candles around it, and like, I'll try to work it into conversation for her to use this thing to go against the Power Rangers. So, we then have Rita that's talking to the Ghost of Darkness, and so the Ghost of Darkness is a state, it's like, well, the only way that you're going to go on and defeat the Power Rangers is by defeating Tommy, their leader. And so, if you just, like, he keeps saying words like destroy, if you destroy the White Ranger, like, you'll destroy the Power Rangers. So, the Ghost of Darkness is to, of course, send out the Wizard of Deception, and once he falls onto the Earth, we have him meet up immediately with Bulk and Skull. Seems like the best people to go on and mind control and make them do your bidding, right? So, the Wizard of Deception goes on to see both Bulk and Skull and is to have him under his wand, and makes them kind of this mind-controlled state, and tells them that they need to go on and cut a lock of hair from Tommy. Hey, don't mess with his threads, man. Don't mess with that dude. Come on. That guy has been taking some time and really growing out that hair. Come on. So, we have Rita that, of course, is to talk to Finster, and we have Rita going on and telling Finster about what she had gone on and done, and was to be able to get the Wizard of Deception, and so on and so forth, and so good on her. So we then transition to have Tommy and Kim, and they're walking off, And Kimberly ends up stating that, like, well, hey, like, this seems like such a nice day. How about I read this book? So here's the goofy thing within this transaction between both Tommy and Kimberly. We have Kimberly that states that she's going to go to the mall with Aisha, and Tommy mentions that he needs to, like, go to the gym, and then weirdly we have Bulk and Skull that comes in with these scissors trying to cut Tommy's hair, and they're kind of just walking by to where they're sticking out like a sore thumb. Both Kim and Tommy are looking at Bulk and Skull. It's like, hey, what do you guys want? And they're like, oh, nothing. And so they try to cut Tommy's hair and miserably fail, and they walk off. So we have Tommy and Kim consistently talking about this same, like, dialogue they've already had, and stated that Tommy was going to leave for the gym instead of going off with Kimberly to the mall. And I think they had this transaction of this same dialogue 3 times. Because when Tommy goes on, faces off against the putties, and ends up with a headache, he again mentions about him going off to the mall with Kim. What about him going to the gym? What about him going to the gym? Did he go to the gym? I'm so confused. So, anyways, that happened, like, multiple times. So, since Bulk and Skull failed at their errand, and the Wizard of Deception just kind of lets Bulk and Skull just go, and they wake up later, and Bulk and Skull are talking about Bulk is talking about a wizard, and Skull doesn't believe him. He's very, like, no, there's no way that actually happened. So the Wizard of Deception realizes that if he needs to get a job done, he needs to go on and do it himself. So Tommy leaves, I guess, supposedly to go off to the gym, and I would say, shouldn't he just go to the youth center? That feels like a gym anyways. Like, that is like a multi-purpose place, so he should have said the youth center. That would have made a whole lot more sense. But anyways, so Tommy is walking alone, and we all of a sudden have the Wizard of Deception and a bunch of these putties all arrive to take down Tommy to cut his hair. So we have Alpha and Zordon realize that Tommy's being attacked. We have Alpha and Zordon that call Billy, and Billy's like, well, hey, like, Kimberly and Aisha aren't here, and Zordon's like, well, or Alpha's like, well, that's fine, like, we'll call them later. So Billy teleports to where Tommy is, and all the other Rangers show up at the same time. So Tommy gets his hair cut. We have all the putties that end up getting taken out by the Power Rangers, of course, and we end up having the Wizard of Deception vanish because the one thing that he needed to do, mission accomplished. So the Wizard of Deception goes on to then put this hair onto the ground and is to wand his way into conjuring a evil Tommy Oliver. So we now have to show that this is the evil Tommy Oliver by him wearing a bandana, a green bandana. And that's kind of really interesting to, like, think about, like, how many times, like, Power Rangers have gone on to wear, like, bandanas, and I guess during that time there wasn't, like, the whole gang color of things. But nowadays I think you would never have somebody go on and, like, wear a bandana on a show unless it's like a just a clear or whatever, or there's assortment of different other things that people would go on and do. But so evil Tommy arrives, and so we now have the Power Rangers. They're back after the whole, like, them taking down putties, and so all the Rangers are asking like, Tommy, are you okay? Because Tommy's just like, like you guys, like I'm gonna pull a Rita and state that I have a headache. And Kimberly, no, I won't go to the mall with you. He was never going to. He was gonna go to the gym. Did he already go to the gym? And then they cut that scene, and so Tommy was just still state. It's like, Kimberly, no, I still will go to the gym, or I still will go to the mall with you because I just don't want to go. Like I'm sick. I'm sick of you like talking about the mall all the time. I just don't want to go. So Tommy leaves, and so now Lord Zed is going on and talking to the Wizard of Deception, and is stating like, okay, like, where do you think the next step is of where we're going? And so the Wizard of Deception is obviously like, well, like, we now need to go on and pull away the Power Rangers away from Tommy. And so it's like, okay, all right, like, so Zed's like, great, like, this is going well. So we have evil Tommy that goes on to call the Power Rangers with his communicator. I actually have a legitimate, like, it looks legitimate, like Green Major's like communicator, but I, heaven forbid, I even wear that through these. Like, I have so much stuff that I just have like lying around somewhere that I would have to either like dig out somewhere or whatever. It's been a while since I've used any of this stuff. So, but anyways, so we have evil Tommy that calls the Power Rangers and is telling them like, hey, like, Zordon had called me, and like, I need you guys at the Angel Grove city limits sign. So we have the Power Rangers going on and meeting up with Tommy at this sign, and we have the Rangers that are asking Tommy, it's like, well, hey, like, so, like, why are we here? What is this all about? And we have some of the Rangers that are thinking, it's like, well, hey, how about we just call Zordon? And Tommy's like, no, don't do that. And, like, hey, we have our mission. And so they're like, well, yeah, but what are we here for? And so we all of a sudden have the Wizard of Deception that shows up. And Adam's like, yeah, we should morph. And Tommy's like, no, don't do that either. And everybody's like, Tommy, like, why? Like, why are you stating that we shouldn't do this? And then Tommy's like, like, ha ha ha, like, I'm the villain, ha ha, like, I'm gonna beat you now, or I'm gonna take you down. And so we then have the Wizard of Deception that is to take the Power Rangers and turn the timetables back on them to now put them into Angel Grove in the 1700s. And so we see that Billy is holding on to the city limit sign, and that ends up turning into the Angel Grove Township population 124 sign. And so we all of a sudden realize that the Power Rangers are in the past, and we have a number of colonial people that are going on and looking at these Power Rangers and possibly calling them witches. So, because they just appeared out of nowhere. And so if you guys remember, like, the Salem witch trials, you would immediately understand that, like, anybody who goes on and does some unusual things is like, hey, like, witch, and kill them off, because, like, people just didn't know any better for whatever reason. So we have the Power Rangers that go on and meet with a girl named Marissa, who is in front of this this coach horse, or coach house. My bad, coach house. I was trying to figure out what exactly this place was, and it seems that Marissa is going to go on and protect these people and hide them away. and try to figure out who they really are. So, oh well, Tommy is, to of course, still dealing with his headache, and he's like, So, Tommy is walking around looking for the other Power Rangers. He bumps into some girl named Jen, and Tommy asks Jen, it's like, well, hey, like, do you know where the other, my other friends are? Because he, like, do you know where the other Power Rangers are? Yes. They're in the next episode. Really? Yeah. Great. So, Tommy goes on to then realize that he doesn't know where the rest of his friends are, and so instead of bumping into a friend, Tommy bumps into a foe. Because Tommy then bumps into himself, the evil Green Ranger, who goes on and states that I'm the Green Ranger, and that's the way the episode ends. So, we then go on into the next episode, which is episode 45. So, in the very beginning of the episode, we have our rest of our Power Rangers, with the exclusion of Tommy, who are back in the 1700s, and we have the Power Rangers. I'm trying to figure out a word that I could state when the Power Rangers aren't like Power Rangers. They're depowered, and they're talking to a person or whichever. Like, because I don't want to state the word Power Rangers, because that means that they're all morphed, and they're not. I can't come up with that equivalent yet, so, like, I could really just call them the civvies. Whenever I say the word civvies, that means, or civilians, the civilian group, that's when they're depowered. But I'll just keep stating Power Rangers anyways. So, we have the Power Rangers who are off in this coach house with Marissa, hiding away. And so I think Kimberly asks Marissa, it's like, well, hey, like, why did they just call us witches? And then Billy goes on to explain it, because, of course, Billy is to be the guy who always has to explain stuff. Even though other people could get lines here. Marissa could have gotten more lines. But Billy deserves to get more lines than anybody, because he works hard. So, still, Billy's getting too many lines. Give him a break. Give him a break for one episode. So, coming to find out, Billy is to state in the past, there had been times when people who had shown signs of unusual and strange behavior, they would often just be called witches. And Marissa's like, in the past? And Billy's like, well, yeah. So, the Power Rangers have to go on and explain to Marissa that they are, of course, from the future. And really, the only thing that Kimberly and Aisha tell Marissa is like, yeah, like, we have malls and we have makeup in the future. Like, it's great. Yeah, it's great. So, back with White and Green Tommy, we have, of course, Tommy and Evil Tommy talking, so I can decipher and help you decipher between the two. We have the White Ranger that's going on and talking to Evil Tommy. It's like, well, hey, like, why are you here? Like, why do you want to fight me? And Evil Tommy goes on and states, it's like, well, everyone has a dark side, and, like, I'm yours, obviously. And how many times has Tommy been evil on this show? A number of times, as well as also him being good, even in the same episode. Cue up Super Ninja Steel, or cue up any of the times of which that we would go on and just have Tommy, who has to fight himself, waiting to the time of which that we have to go on and have Tommy to have gone on and, like, fought somebody and then revealed that it's actually him that he was fighting the whole time. Fighting spirit. Anyways, so we have Rita, Zed, and Goldar, and they're talking, and so we have them relishing in the fact that now Tommy is going to fight evil Tommy, and the catch of it is that uh, the Green Ranger is definitely going to go on and beat the White Ranger, because the White Ranger can fight fair, and evil Green Ranger Tommy won't. So we really just have, at this point, where both Rita and Zed are both dancing it out for whatever goofy reason. And we have like Squat and Babu that are in the back, and they're like grading out of 100, I guess, what they think about this music. We have Babu who's like he's not really saying much. So, and of course we have like Goldar, as always, he's just ticked off about something, because he always is. So it's kind of really interesting when you kind of see like the transformation that like characters like Goldar cosmetically has drastically changed over seasons, to where you would of course like see his face, and his face in the early seasons were so much more simpler, but now it feels like he actually has a mouth, and he actually has like a look that it's like, okay, like this looks like a lot like easier for the actor to kind of move around in. So moving on. So we of course have it where the Wizard of Deception comes into play, and so like saying it's like, okay, come on, like let's get the fight going. So both Tommy's morph, and we of course have the evil Green Ranger that's like, yeah, like I was hoping you were gonna say that. So both of the Tommy's morph, and we end up getting the old Green Morpher scene. That of course, because hey, once you keep one scene of somebody morphing, you never change it. So, because again, why would you spend that time? That's like computer stuff that you just don't want to spend money on. So we have the green and the white. They're fighting. It's great. Like they're like, what they end up doing while they're fighting is they do these like sparkle hits with the arms and legs and stuff, and it looks freaking awesome. It's pretty cool. But anyways, so back at the George Cook coach house with the Colonial Rangers. So we have the Colonial soldiers that are going on to try to seek out the Power Rangers and figure out where they are. So we have the Power Rangers going on and speaking more to Marissa, and finally we have an ancestor of Skull who is just to be called a Colonial soldier because he really has no name in this episode. And so we have the Colonial soldier who's Skull's ancestor that is to talk to the Power Rangers, and of course state that like Marissa will get punished for her kind of helping out these like usurpers or these people. And so the Power Rangers kind of get upset. It's like, well, hey, like Marissa shouldn't get punished for helping us. So they have this plan that Billy should go on and talk to these guys, and like if they've already explained this to Marissa, maybe it'll work on these guys, and it really doesn't. And so we really just have the Power Rangers and Marissa just all decide to run off. So we have them, of course, run off, and like I'll get back to that. So we now have Tommy and Tommy fighting one another. It looks great. it's freaking awesome. But it seems that the Wizard of Deception is starting to get, like, come on already, like, let's get to the real action, which is actually just to stop the action completely. Weirdly enough, he wants more action, but if anything, he just does the opposite. So, the Wizard of Deception finally wants Tommy to just get exhausted. And so Tommy's now on the ground, and so the Wizard of Deception goes on to take the power coin away from Tommy to give it to Evil Green Ranger, and it's to tell him, hey, like, go and seek out Alpha and Zordon, my old friends, and go and try to get the Dragon Zord away from them. So we have, of course, both Alpha 5 and Zordon just kind of in the command center, just chilling out. Just, you know what, just hitting buttons and doing some stuff. And so all of a sudden, we have Alpha 5 that realizes that Tommy had came back. And Alpha 5's, oh, hey, Tommy. And then she's like, whoop. And so we all of a sudden realize that Alpha had made a mistake because this is the wrong Tommy. And so Zordon has to confirm that to Alpha. It's like, well, yeah, this is not our Tommy. So we all of a sudden have the Green Ranger that is to be putting his fist and fingers in the air and is talking to Zordon and telling him to, like, hey, man, like, hold on to your force field. Like, I'm going to go on and, like, I'm going to take what I want kind of thing because there's nothing you can do. What are you going to send, like, a robot after me? So, like, there's no interrogation or there's no intimidation that you can do, Zordon, because you're just a face in the sky somewhere. That's really what you are, just a face in the wall somewhere. So we continue to have Zed and Rita dancing along. So come to find out, Zed is to make the clear consensus that him and Rita should go on and make a baby. Again, something we'll see somewhere down the road from one of these tie-in stories where legitimately child. So Rita's like, what? Baby? No. Because Rita had already gone on and stated that she just wants to kind of take over Zed. And Zed's like, what did you just say, Rita? And she's like, oh no, like I'm just so, like I'm so excited, and you know. So we have Rita that goes on and is to talk to Finster afterwards about the whole baby conversation. And so Rita talks to Finster about, like, well, hey, you need to come up with a potion to make Zed forget about like that whole baby talk, or really just to figure out a way to kind of like slim down like him being in love with me. And Finster's just like, well, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, I don't know what potion to try. So we have Finster's like, oh, gee golly, I don't know. So we go on to have the Power Rangers. They're back, colonial time. And so the Power Rangers are running off, and come to find out, they end up finding this horse and buggy that we have someone going on and wanting to take care of them. And that ends up being Uncle Ben, or in this case, the ancestor of Bulk. So everybody's going to be like, hey, like, look at this guy. Like, so they end up asking what this guy's name is, and he's like, oh, my name is Ben. So we have the Power Rangers that are kind of off on their own, and they're kind of hiding out. And so all of a sudden, Aisha is with a kind of Rocky off to the side somewhere, and Aisha's thinking that like Rocky is kind of moving his like foot way too much, and Rocky's like, well, I'm not moving my foot at all. Aisha ends up getting up to realize that there seems to be a number of rats that are right beside her. So Aisha's like, oh, I hate rats. And so all of a sudden we have the Wizard of Deception that comes back to see the Colonial Rangers. And he ends up stating, it's like, ha 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 ha, like, hey, you hate rats? Good, I can use that against you. And so the Wizard of Deception is to lay it out like this. He's like, well, hey, like, I'm just letting you know that, like, we're going to wreak havoc on your Earth. And, like, hey, like, I'm just letting you know now, like, there's nothing you can do to stop it, yada, yada, yada. And so also, the Wizard of Deception goes on and turns these rats into monster-sized rats. So we then realize that the Power Rangers cannot morph as we have the Rangers try to do it, and they fail at it. So they're like, well, like, plan B is to run away. So we have the Rangers going on and calling for Marissa and Ben, like, hey, let's all run off together. So we, of course, have the Dragon Zord that is going on and destroying Earth in the most recycled footage that we can probably find, right? Because, man, if I had not gone on and watched the early episodes of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I would state, it's like, is this footage being reused? Because it feels like it. Maybe it's a little bit extended a little bit, I'm not quite sure. And so, by the end of episode 45, we go on to, of course, have Lord Zed, who is really just relishing in the fact that he is winning. That he is to finally put the Power Rangers in their place, so on and so forth. And that's how 45 ends. So, episode 46, we have Tommy recovering on the ground. I guess he might just be eating some grass at this time. I'm not quite sure. So, we transition to having Zed, Rita, and Goldar all bickering about which idea it was to have the Wizard of Deception, which technically it was originally Goldar's idea, then it was Zed's idea, then it was Rita's idea, but Rita is the one to take the credit for it, and Zed is like, well, whose idea is it? And Goldar states is like, well, obviously it's yours, sir. And so, because we always have Goldar that takes Zed's side, so guess who's going to be in the right here? So, we, I think, have Zed who goes on to talk again to the Wizard of Deception, and the Wizard of Deception just states mostly that all is well, and like the Dragon Zord just continues to destroy everything anyways, because we have to have more footage of that. So we are now back with the Colonial Rangers. And so we have the Colonial soldiers that are all standing around. Some of them are eating cheese, aka Skull's ancestor. And we have a guy that is kind of like captured in one of these like awaiting punishment kind of wood like clamp things where he's kind of having his hand and his head in one piece. So we all of a sudden have the Colonial soldiers starting to like talk about how there's certain bits of food going missing, and so we have the Colonial soldiers realize that all of a sudden these massive rats are chasing everybody out of town, and we start to have the Colonial soldiers that start to run, because one of the soldiers asks Skull's ancestor, it's like, well, hey, like, what should we do? about any of this, and Skull's ancestor states, it's like, well, run, because the rats are coming for us. And the guy who's in the punishment thing is like, well, hey, like, just give him the cheese. That's all he wanted. So we now have Tommy that is just getting up from his grass nap. And so Tommy finally wakes up and is to go on and ask Bulk and Skull, like, hey, like, have you gone on and have you seen my friends? And Bulk and Skull, it's like, well, have you seen them? Because obviously you're a little blurry there, buddy. So we have both Bulk and Skull walking off, and like Bulk makes a joke about like stating that it must be too much of the martial arts that is just kind of wearing him down. So we have both Alpha and we have both Zordon, who are really just relying on Tommy here, and they're like, yeah, like we should keep in good contact with Tommy. And so I think we even have Alpha that calls Tommy and is to ask him about that he'll need to go on and be like their kind of last defense and so on and so forth. So we have also Zordon, who is to realize that Tommy does look exhausted by looking at the viewing globe and seeing that Tommy's stumbling through these stairs. So Zordon calls Tommy to state that if he just goes on and morphs, he'll have a decent amount of energy for a short time. So Tommy then morphs and he realizes, yeah, I have energy. Yeah, look at me. And so we, of course, have Lord Zed, who's like, well, hey, like, we're going to stop that right now. So Zed sends out the putties to try and distract Tommy, and Tommy easily wipes them all out. And he's like Lord Zed sending out all these putties to defeat me, these guys were nothing. So we, of course, have Tommy that realizes the Dragon Zord is out and creating all this destruction. So Tommy, of course, calls for the Tiger Zord and then is to go into the Tiger Zord and call for the Tiger Zord power, and then goes on to go into warrior mode and tries to put out this thunderbolt fireball, and nothing really quite works. Because we have like Saba, who's like, you need more power, and so the White Ranger is like, yeah, I cannot beat the Dragon Zord, it's too evenly matched with me. So Tommy ends up jumping back out of his Zord, and it's like, well, yeah, like we need to do something else, we need to try something else. So we again have, in colonial times, we have the rats that are just kind of running all over the town. None of it is to be really of anything that makes sense, because that's all the Power Rangers can go on and do at this point, because they can't morph, they're still running around. So we finally have Alpha and Zordon that realize, and also Zed realizes this, that the Wizard of Deception's wand is to be the only thing that Tommy can use to get back to the past. So we also are having Alpha and Zordon trying to figure out like what time period that the other Rangers could be in, and like Alpha has been going on and trying to look back at every time period to find the signature of the Rangers to try to kind of get them out of that time period and get them back into the present. So we need Tommy to tell Alpha and Zordon what time period that the Rangers are back from. So we have Tommy who's fighting Evil Ranger Tommy. And so we get to a point where Tommy, in a bit of dialogue, is to trick the Green Evil Ranger to tell him what time the Power Rangers are back from. So Tommy is to state about going back to get his friends, and the Evil Ranger states is like, well, so do you want to go back 200 years in the past? And Tommy's like, aha, like, you told me without really telling me. So we then have Zordon, we have Alpha that's like, great, like, Tommy tricked them. So they figure out exactly where the Rangers are. So now Zordon tells Tommy that it's like, hey man, you gotta get the wand. So we have Tommy that kind of jumps over the Green Ranger and is to try to take out the Wizard of Deception, and he grabs his wand. So right after, like, the Green Ranger was trying to avoid, the evil Green Ranger was trying to avoid the White Ranger from getting it, Tommy just jumps over him and gets the wand anyways. So we have Tommy that goes back into the past, and he goes back as the White Ranger. So we have Tommy meet up with all the Power Rangers, and so instead of taking down and wiping out all these rats, instead Tommy is like, well, hey, I need to take all my friends to the present, and then we'll come back and help you. So again, with time travel, you can go back anytime that you want to, but it is what it is. Maybe you could just state that it's like, well, hey, like, Tommy didn't know how the wand worked. It is whatever it is there. So they go back into the present day, and so the rest of the Power Rangers kind of just Thunder Megazorded up. And so Tommy goes on to face off against the Wizard of Deception. And so Tommy ends up figuring out a way to destroy the wizard, and after he goes on and does that, the evil Green Power Ranger seems to have lost the spell under the wizard, and is to now have us realize that there is two Tommies here, and like, now what do we do? So evil Tommy is now good Tommy. So we now have Tommy, White Ranger, running off to try and tell the Power Rangers and the Thunder Megazord, it's like, well, hey, like, you don't need to, like, ka-slice. Like, you don't need to do the ka-slice for one episode. Like, just put that sword down. And so we have Tommy who's realizing that it's like, well, wait a minute, like, I should try to, like, we have Green Ranger Tommy that realizes that I should do something too. So we, of course, have the Green Ranger that goes on and is to, of course, take the Dragon Zord and have it just fall over. And so the Megazord realizes, like, the Thunder Megazord realizes, like, oh, okay, all right, like, problem solved. So they just put the sword back into the holster, and they're like, okay, we're done for the day. And so the Green Ranger then calls back and forces the Dragon Zord back into the water. And so we then have all the Rangers go back to the past to then defeat those rats. So they don't have any real, like, unique way of beating them. It's not like they bust out these, like, unique weapons or this unique thing. I think there was at one point where we did have, like, a Wild Wild West, like, Power Rangers episode that, like, we had to have, like, the Rangers have, like, these unique, like, themed, like outfits for the time period of them, like, wearing these these like cowboy kind of holsters and all these things. That was so goofy. So we we're almost I think we're almost done here also. We're almost like this is the last bit of it. So we have one point where the Green Ranger goes on and kicks this rat, and you could see him like go really flying, but then all of a sudden you can see him being like dragged through this dirt. And I was like, okay, like obviously like he was being hung on some wire, but then the wire had some kickback and they couldn't have edited that out. They just thought it's like, oh yeah, like we're just gonna like continue to show the shot. How about you just kind of cut away? You could have done like impact, cut away to something else, but no, you just stuck with that action. So we just see a guy's foot being dragged. Okay, so we go on and have these rats that are all taken down, and so we immediately think that okay, like Green Ranger Tommy and White Ranger Tommy are just going to like go back to the present, and Green Ranger Tommy's like, oh no, like I'm gonna stay back in this time period because two Tommies can't be in the same time period. And so White Ranger Tommy's like, well, where are you gonna go? And Green Ranger's like, well, like I'll just be here. And we immediately have the colonial soldier that's going on and stating it's like, well, like I think I can go on and have him in my regiment. So we have Tommy that powers down, and all of a sudden he is to have this green this green lightning that ends up having this hat, and then Tommy ends up putting on this hat. Weirdly enough, we have in the background, like I think there's some recycled lines here, or somebody kind of stating the same stuff, because in the background you hear like certain people stating that like, oh, like, do you see how that just hat came out of nowhere? That guy's a witch. That guy's a witch. I'm like, they've seen some weird stuff. All these colonial people in this time, like, they should just be like, hey, let's not witch everybody. Like, come on, like, give it up. But no, like, people weirdly still stating that, like, oh, that guy's still a witch, because probably they don't have, they just desperately wanted some lines from the background people. So the rest of the Rangers go back to their present time, and you would have thought that maybe we could have had like some kind of weird time capsule or some little thing that like evil Tommy would have left for White Ranger Tommy, like as this funny little thing, just like, hey, yeah, like, dear Tommy, from Tommy. Like, this is the life of which I had led since this, and like to just kind of wrap up the episode. But instead, we had Adam that was trying to get Marissa to come back with him into the present, and we had Marissa that turns to Adam and it's like, well, I'm sorry, Adam. Like, I think I need to go on and stay here, because maybe if I go on and I go back with you in the present, like, maybe you won't be born in the future. Because anything that is taken from the past and messed up, yeah, like, that could really affect the future in some way. So we have the Rangers that are again all sitting around this table, and we just kind of have Adam that is very mopey and very moody. So we have all the Rangers that are looking at Adam. It's like, well, hey, like, yeah, like, we're getting all our papers done, and it's fairly easy because we already know what time we've gone back to. And so, like, Adam, why are you so mopey? Why are you feeling so down? And Adam's just like, well, like, it would have just been, you know, it would have... And then all of a sudden, we have this girl that drops all of her books, and that Adam is like, well, hey, I'll go on and help this girl. Come to find out, Adam ends up realizing the person who needs help with her books is none other than a, great 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 grandchild of Marissa, and it looks like the exact same girl. It's like, wow. So we have Adam and we have Marissa who both smile, and that ends the episode. So let me know in the comments below how you felt about the return of the Green Ranger. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about these 3 seasons, whether you thought they were garbage, whether you thought they were great, whether you thought that they were really to also be recycling a lot of footage from past episodes. Because that, yeah. You would have thought that, like, Power Rangers would have gone on and just had, like, a lot of Power Rangers footage just kind of left off to the side. Like, to just be like, well, no, like, we're gonna go on and have every bit of money being really used on every bit of this footage. But I guess they really didn't factor in that at some point they would need to go on and, like, scramble a American version of this show and have different kinds of footage. So yeah, so if anything, yeah, we would have to probably go on and have to have the Sentai footage trying to uh, be like footage that the American Power Rangers could also use, and then at some point we would just get to like the American Power Rangers just being shot in New Zealand, and then they would just kind of easily use a lot of the lot of the same characters and so on and so forth. So, anyways, I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.